with me because I am on my tablet and on my cell phone doing a live simulcast both on Facebook Live and on Periscope. So, can you guys see me on Periscope okay? Just want to make sure that everything is all clear and everything is well. Hi, Teresa. Hi, Renee. Welcome back. And I'm just going to invite some people over here on Facebook Live. Mm, there we go. Is that better, you guys, on Periscope? Yay. Okay, good. So, just so you guys know that I only can see part of my face on Periscope because I have my notes and everything on my tablet. So, guys, just bear with me just 1 second. Just taking a moment here to invite other people to join in the gratitude goodness of the day. But how many of you guys did you guys see last week's gratitude session? I forgot what it was about. But anyway, just give me a second and we can go ahead and get going. Just inviting a few people over here on Facebook Live. So you guys, just so you know, it might be a little shaky over here on my tablet because I have a few things holding it up. But okay, so yay, all my people are here. So I am both on Facebook and on Periscope Live, everyone. So you guys have to forgive me if things are a little shaky doing the live simulcast. But welcome to Super Soul Sunday, all the gratitude goodness that I'm sharing with you guys. Yes, it is the key. Now you know why I love Facebook Live so much better. Anyway, so today we are going to be talking about the ego versus the higher self. And the reason why this topic came up because I was at dinner the other day with Rocky and a few friends, and it just came up some kind of way. Don't know how it came up, but it just came up, and we ended up talking about it. And I felt that this was a topic that is much needed for all of us to discuss. You know, because sometimes we have the little voice in our head, and it's hard to determine what that voice is. Is the voice our ego, or is it our intuition, our higher self, that's really guiding us on this path? So, without further ado, Jermaine, that's so awesome. I'm going to start with an excerpt from Awaken with Gratitude, my book, and I think I froze up on Periscope. Oh no. Well, I got to keep going. So the excerpt from the book Awaken with Gratitude is called Voice of Consciousness. I'm just going to read a little bit, which really will open everything up to today's topic, ego versus higher self. The voice of consciousness is more than our intuition or the little voice in our head keeping us out of trouble. It is also the source of knowledge in which our path, creativity, and divine energy comes from. For example, if we ask ourselves or God a question in which we desire an answer for, in time we will receive it when we are ready to accept it. However, how do we receive the answer, you may ask? The answer is inside of us. The answer that we wish to desire comes from within. The answer, when we have faith in the answer when it's received, this opens up a whole new level of trust in ourselves. The trust of knowledge begins in alignment of the mind, body, and spirit, and reduces doubt and fear. So that's pretty much where we are at in our lives right now. And for you all that are joining me, I am doing a live simulcast on Periscope and on Facebook, so I'm popping back and forth between the two. However, I think I lost my Periscope. But I just have to keep going while I try to fix that situation. But anyway, how many of you guys, I want to hear from you guys, because this is, as you guys know, I love interaction. How many of you guys know or feel what the ego actually is? What is the ego for you? Is it a voice in your head that's guiding you to do something? Is the ego, your machismo, your bravado that's giving you that acknowledgement and what it is that you're supposed to be doing? What is the ego for you guys? Because I want to know before I really get into it, so I can offer any clarity to give you and what the ego is and what the purpose of the ego and what it really serves. So yeah, find the answers that come in synchronicity and all signs of a lot. Yes, exactly. So basically the ego is this small part of ourselves guiding us to a path of let's get it done, so to speak. It's this little voice telling us that we should do this, or I should do this, or it is guiding you to a place of first steps, if you will, to your spirit, to your soul. The ego is a necessity, if you will. So how many of you guys feel that if you haven't had some sort of ego about yourself, some sort of, what's the word I'm looking for? Some sort of bravado, if you will, about who you are, saying that I am better than this person, or I am the best at what I do, you feel that you probably wouldn't be where you are right now. Am I right? So how many of you guys feel that without your ego challenging you and another person's ego challenging you to come into this space of like, I'm better than this person, or I'm better than that person, and it is what it needs to be, right? Yeah, I can't get my Periscope to back up. I don't know why. I'm working on that right now. Probably have to restart it. So, anyway, as I was saying, so the ego is this little voice that is challenging you to allow you to arise to another level. So how many of you guys feel, you can type with a simple Y or N for yes or no. If you want, you can go into a further explanation. So how many of you guys felt like without your ego that you wouldn't be where you are right now in fulfilling your life and allowing you to grow and to develop as an individual? Because that's pretty much what the ego's job is to do, is this little voice, is this sensation of fulfillment that I must do, something that I must achieve, something that I must accomplish to allow this purpose, this long-term and this short-term desire to be fulfilled. Anyone? So just as I continue on here, just trying to fix a couple of things, technical difficulties here with my Periscope, but I love you guys on Facebook so much. So in allowing your ego to develop itself and you become one with it and you create the relationship with your ego, you create a relationship with it because your ego is not separate from you. Your ego is you. Your ego is one with who you are. Your ego is part of the evolution of your soul, the evolution to connect to the higher self. Because without the ego, we wouldn't know or understand what the higher self is. So before I move on to the clarification of ego and higher self, are there any questions about your ego and understanding your ego and what the purpose is behind the ego? Because our ego is here for us to connect and to allow itself to develop and to grow and to connect into what we desire it to be. Carrie, that's a good one. It's kind of like a spoiled, deserving sister. Well, exactly. That's exactly what it is. The ego feels like it has this sense of entitlement. That's basically what the ego is. The ego is the desire of wanting something that we can't or want to really achieve right now. That's a good one. I never thought about it that way, Alan, that your ego is outside of yourself. And I want to just clarify that your ego is your unique fingerprint, that your ego is or helps develop you to who you are now. Unfortunately, your ego is not on the outside of you. It's not separate from you. You are a part of it, and it is a part of you in this unity field that you create for yourself. So in this mass field of unity, there is everyone that has their signature appearance, but everyone is connected to it. So it doesn't matter, if you feel that if you're without your ego, that you wouldn't just be yourself, that you would just blend in. You will still be you, with or without it. And the ego is the path to the higher self. So, guys, I am happy that you all are here on Facebook with me because I can't get my Periscope to work, so I'm going to have to send a special note to all my scopers out there. And I'm glad you came over. So you're not missing this goodness live or now or whenever. So, if there are not any more questions about the ego and the purpose and what it serves, I'm going to move on to the higher self. What is the higher self? Right, Carrie? So what exactly is the higher self? So, as I stated before in my opening excerpt from my book, Awaken with Gratitude, it is the voice that we hear in our head. Just like the ego. The ego is the voice that we hear in our head. But the higher self is something that is more calm, as opposed to the ego is more loud and more boisterous and desires to make itself known. But the higher self, just like the ego, is a voice that is guiding us on our path that needs to be fulfilled. And with this level of fulfillment of our voice, of our soul, of our spirit, it helps us in our co-creation. And I have to say this because this just came to me, is that about a month ago I was reading something from Abraham, I was listening something from Abraham, and those of you who follow me know who Abraham is, and those who don't know, Abraham is a group of entities channeled through a human named Esther Hicks, and she channels these beings to bring more light and love and enlightenment to us on the planet who are not aware of the energies that are happening now in our time. So, the quote that I heard from Abraham is that with our higher self, because we always hear the term co-creation, and what I heard in the quote was that people sometimes misunderstand the term co-creation, and we always co-create with our higher self being the source of all things, the source in which we are all connected to. So that's where the co-creation comes from. This is where we are tend to connect with our higher self, because our higher self is a gentle, loving spirit, as opposed to our ego is one of self-love and self-fulfillment. Not saying that the higher self is not. It's just on a lower vibrating level. And that's the main difference between the two, the ego and the higher self. Your ego is on a lower vibrating level, a lower frequency that helps to drive and fulfill your short-term desires, and just wants you to just go out there and get it done, as opposed to the higher self is more on the elevated, higher level of vibration, of a higher frequency, that just wants you to be at your best and wants you to fulfill what you fulfill with a lot of love and a lot of joy and a lot of peace. And this is when the higher self just allows you to have the free will of choice to do what it is that you truly desire to do. Does that make sense to everyone? Are we all on one accord with and what the ego is and what the higher self is? Are we all on the same page? Yes, so I take that as a yes. Thank you, Carrie. So for those of you that are popping in now and watching now and later, if you want to know more about me and what I do, you can also visit HealersPew.com for all of the gratitude goodness. And I'm just going to keep moving on, people. And so just want to get to the staying with my notes. Just want to be clear in how the ego serves you, because it does serve you. And a lot of people, cringe at the term or when they hear the word ego. Yes, exactly. Alan and I will get to more of a clarification of that later. But for those who out there who's watching now and later in your now, cringe when you hear the word ego. And if you do cringe, or when you do become scared, as Carrie put it earlier, or frightened, why do you guys get scared or frightened when you hear the word ego? Because it's just a natural progression of the human soul when it's evolving here on the planet. Because our ego, our self, our lower vibrating self, when we enter into this world, or when we enter into this place, this earth, we have to have a mechanism to help drive and support our desires and goals, whatever they may be. And so this soul, this desire of the lower vibrating frequency in which we are in alignment with, helps to drive whatever our goals are at that time. And that's what the ego is we are in alignment with that lower vibrating frequency when we come into this planet and trying to evolve and understand what it is that we are doing. And without the ego, then we are not able to propel ourselves and evolve into whatever dreams and passions and desires we want to go into. So yes, exactly, Kia. And a lot of people do tend to associate negative energy with the word ego. But we have to also understand that the word ego, like anything else, without the contrast, we would not understand what the higher self is and align ourselves into that. And when we are in alignment with the lower vibrating frequencies of self, that we are in alignment with whatever it is that we attract in our lives. So the ego serves ourselves to understand it, to understand where we are in that perspective, in that light of alignment of desire, to make ourselves known. Because, for example, if a celebrity has, or a not well-known celebrity has a desire to become a known celebrity, that's their ego driving them to align with the forces to make them well-known. So you have to understand that the ego is not just this lowly energy, it's a motivating energy that we come into alignment with at our time in our lives. So yes, exactly. Alan, what are you saying here, buddy? I've learned to respect my ego and my ego. Yes, exactly. They do tend to work hand in hand. And actually, I have a funny thing that, I can tell the difference in that between my higher self and my ego. I'll explain that later as I move forward in this gratitude session today. So I may understand ego from a more positive. Yes, exactly. So ego is not negative or positive. It just is what it is at that time. It is our self serving ourself in the energy that we are in alignment with. Period. So it makes more like skills. Yes, exactly, Kira. You do kind of need both. You do kind of need both your ego and your higher self. It just really depends on where you are in alignment with at that time when you create what you want to create for yourself. So, are there any questions here, people, before I move on about how the ego serves you and how the higher self serves you and the energy that you become into an alignment with? Because that's pretty much what it comes down to, and how the lower vibrating frequency and how the higher vibrating frequency serves you. So, and how the higher self serves you. The higher self serves you in more of a gratifying, more appreciative way. So, for example, the ego is basically all talk and no walk, some people would say, as opposed to the higher self. It's more about the feeling of accomplishment. It's more about when you create something, when you co-create with yourself, and when you co-create with others around you. It's that energy in which you become into alignment with. It's about the love in which you create from, as opposed to being a celebrity that wants to be, well known. It's about, could be a celebrity who just wants to be known for the work that they do or on and off screen. And for example, one of my favorite quotes are, if you've done something well, most people won't know that you've done anything at all. So basically what that is saying is that you go out and you do your best, and sometimes your work and your best may go unnoticed. And that's only because you've done it so well and so seamlessly and so in alignment with where you are and what you're doing that other people won't even notice that the job and the task that you have created has gone unknown. And that's only because of where we are in our life. Do we really want to take credit for what we do and what we accomplish? Yes. Because that's the ego saying, yes, I've done this, I've created this, this is my baby, this is my joy, this is what I've done. As opposed to the higher self, it's like, we have created this together, this is something that I'm passionate about, and this is something that brings me so much joy in life in what I do. So that's the major difference in the energy and the vibration and what we feel. And so one of the major differences that most of us can feel when we are listening to the ego and the higher self are the pronouns. So if you ever catch yourself saying I, or mine, or my, it is more certainly that that's the ego speaking to you and saying, okay, this is what I need to do, this is what has to be done. You have to really listen to the words and the vibration of what they give off. And it's funny because when I write and when I go out to set something and set some goals, I always hear the word me, not me, we. I always hear the word we when I create or when we create or when we do something. So how many of you guys, I want to hear from you, have heard I or the word we in your head? So there's a huge difference if you are in what you're in alignment with when you hear I or we. So as I wait here for some questions and some comments, I'm going to try to get my Periscope back online here, people. Oh wow. Okay, so I want to hear from you guys. So how many of you guys heard I or we when you're having a conversation with yourself? Because that's pretty much what it comes down to, is when we are talking with ourselves and what comes across. What do we feel and how do we feel when we are in alignment with who we are? Right? So that's pretty much what it comes down to. Right? That's who we are, that's what we're doing. That's where our, yes, exactly. So, Kia, how do you feel when you hear the word I, when you are having that conversation with yourself? How do you feel? Do you feel good? Do you feel bad? Do you feel okay? Do you feel like, there could be more? Yeah, because when you hear I, how does that make you feel when you hear I? Do you feel like selfish? Do you feel needy? Do you feel... Explain to me, because I really am interested, because this is an interesting topic that most of us don't tend to talk about and discuss. And just, I'm here multitasking or switch tasking people. You genuinely feel good about I. But sometimes you do need to say I, because if you're creating something and you want the world to know that this is you, this is your work, this is your product, then of course you have to use I. But when you are in alignment with higher vibration, then of course you're generally going to gravitate to the lower vibration of, this is what I've created, so it's me, it's only me, no one else has done this. Am I right? So just give me 1 second, people. Just finally got my Periscope back up on the other side here, and just getting that going. So I thank you guys so much for your patience and understanding. So in this matter here. So yes. So I really appreciate you all so much and what it is that you're doing. But now we really have to really dig deep here, people. We really have to understand what it is that makes us feel good. So, Kia, what makes you feel good when you say or hear the word I? Because I is when we really tend to stay stuck at a lower frequency. And when we attach ourselves to a higher vibration, we have to tend to move forward and continue on in the evolution of self. So, yes, Renee. Hi, Renee. I'm back. I don't know what happened. Some freak accident on Periscope. But you guys can definitely tune into the replay that I will post on my website. Or maybe just send you the link. So, yes. Yeah, sometimes when I prefer to focus on things and people, entities outside of me, striking the world. So Kia, I really understand that. That's really interesting that when you tend to focus on others, things, and people, so you tend to look more outside of yourself, and that's pretty much where the ego is really gets its energy from, is when we tend to look outside ourselves and tend to look at what other people are saying, what other people are doing, and how other people are looking, and what it is that we tend to do that really drives that. What's that motivating force? So the motivating force could be generated from outside of yourself, and look at what other people are doing and saying and thinking that has absolutely nothing to do with you. So, tell me if I'm on the right path with that, because that's what it sounds like to me. That, and generally, when we look at celebrities in the news, or when we look at people, in the news period, or if we look up to someone, other role models, and see what other people are doing in our field, we tend to think, oh, I want to be so much like them. And sometimes we tend to focus on that, and that's it. And we lose that personal drive. We lose that true motivation, if you will, the true motivation and why we started on the path and journey which we started on in the beginning. So how many of you guys, I want to hear from you, how many of you guys felt like when you started something, you started it from a pure creative force, a pure creative energy, but halfway through, somewhere, when you started analyzing and looking at the situation for what it really is, you tend to switch your focus on looking at the external and switching your focus into like, okay, why am I doing this? Am I doing this for this reason? Am I doing it for that reason? You tend to get lost in there. So how many of you guys tend to like just really forget all about it and just really lose focus in its entirety? So Teresa, Renee, thank you guys for coming back. Really appreciate it. I don't know what happened on Periscope, but I appreciate your loyalty. I really do. So when we tend to not look and create from within, which was the origin of the creation, or the origin of the thought, because when we co-create, we are attached to our source, our higher self, our God self, if you will. And that creation comes in and we stream it through to fulfill that dream, that purpose and desire, whatever it may be. Yet, at the same time, as we go through the process and understanding the absolute creation that has been manifested in physical form, we lose sight of it. Because we get caught up in what everyone else is doing and not what we're doing and not what we're focusing on. Hi Robin, how are you? Look forward to seeing you next month and meeting you. So I'm kind of like winging it right now because I lost my notes. Because my notes on my tablet here on where I'm doing Periscope, and I don't want to lose Periscope again. So, I forgot where all my notes were, what all my talking points were, but I know I've gone through pretty much almost half of them. So, I just want us to be clear, for those who are watching on Facebook Live and Renee and Teresa on Periscope, what are your questions about trying to truly understand and know the difference between the ego versus higher self? Because there is a distinct distinction between the two, which is the vibration and the energy in which we are in alignment with. Yeah, so Renee, I'm going to have to back up for a second, but let me answer this quick question for a second. But yes, I will definitely break down the difference for you. I certainly gotten lost, for instance, on my fitness journey, my motivations. Exactly. So you really have to find what drives you now, and you have to really hone in on the purpose on why you started your fitness journey in the first place, because that's what it pretty much comes down to. Did you start your journey because you wanted to lose weight? Did you start your journey because you want to look good? Did you start your journey because of health purposes? You really have to really get into the reason why, the core reason why you started what it is that you started. And sometimes when we tend to get lost and caught up in the outside and as analyzing ourselves and what other people have done, we tend to take that energy on and create something else in its entirety. Kind of like Frankenstein, if you will. So, Renee and Teresa on Periscope, just so you guys know, the main difference between the ego and the higher self is that you have your ego, which is at a lower vibrating frequency. And this frequency you become in alignment with when you want to motivate yourself and push yourself into looking at the outside and what other people have created. And that energy there is kind of like pushing you and motivating you, as opposed to the higher self, where the energy is a higher vibrating energy that comes from within, where you have totally connected with your higher self in this process of creating something that you desire so much. And the example that I used earlier was that you have a not so well-known celebrity who wants to be known. So they're ego-driven to connect with the agent or whomever to get them known, to get them noticed. And that's pretty much what the ego does. It helps to get you noticed and known, as opposed to the higher self. The higher self is more so like a calm wave of energy that's like, I am here, I am present, I am aware, I am connected with what it is that I'm doing. And it's, you go out and like, what do they say? Someone who's just becomes famous, they go out and they spend all this money. And now that they got everything they wanted, they shift their energy and their purpose. So you kind of have to think of it that way. So yes. Yes, exactly, Robin. When we tie our energy so much into our ego, we do feel buried and we don't know what to do and how to get out of it. So we start looking at other outside resources and analyzing everything that it is that we're doing to create a life and an energy about, yes, exactly. It's about the art or about you. Yes, exactly. You guys said it right before I finished it. So yeah, it's totally about you and what it is that you are trying to accomplish. And whatever energy that you're in alignment with, it will help to drive you and push you to that end game, that end goal, whether it's your ego or it's the higher self. And sometimes, the two kind of have to meet in the middle. It's like the yin and yang. You have to balance it. It's a balancing act. And what was I watching? I was watching something really interesting last week. And it was about how psychopaths, they, are really psychopaths. I forget what it was said, but the gist of it was that you have a psychopath and what drives them to kill or not kill and what drives them to do what it is that they do. And everyone has what's the word I'm looking for? Everyone has I can't find it, help. Everyone has the potential to be a psychopath, if you will. And so, what drives one to do one thing and not the other. And what was discovered was that you have someone who you have two things. You have a short-term goals and you have long-term goals. And what separates, psychopaths from what people would consider non-psychopaths, but still have that potential to be one, is the choices that they make. So, for example, you throw a brick of glass in someone's window, right? And someone who's a psychopath will not consider the long-term effects of throwing a brick through someone's glass. They just want to, have that satisfaction, that short-term satisfaction, that pleasure of dopamine's release. They just want that short-term pleasure to be fulfilled. As opposed to someone who is non-psychopath, they tend to think about the long-term effects of them throwing that brick of glass in someone's window. Like they can go to jail, someone can get killed, someone can get injured. There's all these things that they consider. And I say this to say that the ego and the higher self are the same thing. Your ego only thinks about what it needs to feed itself now. Right? The ego only thinks about what it needs to feed itself now. Doesn't care about the consequences, doesn't care about who the ego will hurt, or doesn't care about who the ego will harm. It just cares about being fed. Just like a fat person, excuse me, sorry, I shouldn't say that. Just like you have a craving for some donuts. You don't care, you just want the donuts. And if your consequences that you put on like about 5, 10, 20, 30 pounds, that's what happens, right? As opposed to someone who's thinking about the consequences, like, I want that donut, but I started working out, so I don't know if I should really, really have that donut. And they think about the reason why they crave that donut. So, Teresa and Renee, you guys are quiet over there, but I do thank you for all the hearts over there on Periscope. I really appreciate that. So just give me a second. I'm going to scroll back here through some questions over here on Facebook Live, because there was a few. So what do I have here? It seems to me that when your higher self is speaking to you and or leading you, it does not necessarily speak in everyday common ways. Like, exactly, Jermaine, that's exactly it. And the higher self speaks to you in the way that you understand it, because it's you talking to you. Your higher self is you talking to you. Your higher self is you talking to you. It is speaking to you in a language that you and only you could understand. As opposed to the ego, it's taking the energy from the outside, the lower vibrating energy, and bringing it into your world where it can be recognized and the volume is turned up on. It's like, look at me, I'm here, I'm present. Let's do something that's going to feed me, as opposed to something that's going to feed your spirit, right? Or so Aurora, thank you for that. So yeah, if you want to know more about me or this particular gratitude session, you can definitely watch the replay after I post it. And you can definitely want to know anything more about me. You can also visit my website, HillisPugh.com, and you can go there where you find all the gratitude goodness about my book, about my upcoming seminar, and all good things Hillis. So yeah, let me see. Rocky, I realized early in my... Exactly. Thank you for sharing that, Rocky, because we definitely, as I said earlier, it's all about finding the balance between the two. So it's about trying to understand what the ego actually is. And as I explained before, if you guys need any clarity about what it is and how to really understand and define it, we have to really understand what it is that we're talking about. So the ego, just to break it down for you guys, the ego is a lower vibrating frequency that at some point we do come into alignment with, that is connected to the energy outside of us and bringing the energy into our view, into our perspective. And that's only because we called it forth. And this is only because we don't know what else to connect to until we reach a higher evolution, a higher awareness of self. So the ego is a necessity of the evolution to connect to the higher self. And the higher self is us connecting with ourselves. It is us looking within to connect to the energy that is already there to bring us to a higher place of existence, to co-create with ourselves and to co-create with other beings, and to truly understand that the purpose of the higher self is not only to manifest our desires, it's also to understand the connection that we have with ourselves, with others, not just people, but plants, animals, and inanimate objects, things that still have energy and life that we all still embrace and connect to each and every single day. Yes, exactly. That's exactly it, Robin. Yeah, so we really have to determine the difference between ego and self, and higher self. And so the ego generally is when we have that voice in our head and it speaks in I and my, and not we, they, them. So the ego is more self-inclusive, and the higher self is all-inclusive. Does that make sense to everyone? Hi, Melissa. So thank you for your question. Is there anything higher than higher self? So that's an amazing question. And it really depends on how you want to look at that question. Because for me personally, and you have to find this personally for you. But for me personally, if you want to look at higher self in terms of God or any of the divine source, the creator source, the universe, Buddha, the beings that's in the masters, then no, there is nothing higher than higher self, because you are the higher self. You are the source of your creation. You are the master in which you create. You are the creator of creations, because you are God, you are source, you are all that there is. If you think of it in those terms, then no, there's nothing higher than higher self. But if you want to think of it in layman's terms of, having levels of ascension, meaning that you are here, you are now, you are present in this physical body, this entity that's having this symbiotic relationship with the planet, with the earth, with the energy of this physical body. And then once you transition into, your next role, your next evolution, and your next self, then yes, there is a higher self in terms of ascension, if you want to think of it that. So it's all about your beliefs. It's all about in how you think of it. So you really have to really look within to find your true answer for yourself at this time in your life now. So yes. Robin, the best way I've had to handle it is to say if it is for me, yes. Like the boomerang effect, right, Robin? It's a boomerang effect. So the thing that you can only connect to your higher self, though, is through ego. Once it's through ego. Exactly. Oh, Laura, that's amazing that you have come to that. So, Aurora just stated, because for my people on Periscope here, is that the thing you can only connect to is your higher self through your ego, once you have accepted your ego. So you guys really, that's an amazing one, and that's really it. You really have to accept where you are with your ego that motivates you to push forward and have the courage to make the transition, to make the leap, if you will, into the higher self, into understanding the connection that you have to all things, and not be as selfish with what's going on in your life, because it's okay to be selfish, so it's okay to take that time for you, but at the same time you really have to allow for your higher self to grow and to blossom and to understand what it is that's really going on within yourself, and stop looking outside, because it all has to do with being inside. It feels good. It feels really good. So you guys, are there any additional questions about the higher self versus ego, and what's the main difference between the two? Because I just want to make sure that we're all on the same page, that we all have that clarity before we move forward into the closing, before we move into the finale of today's gratitude session, all this wonderful gratitude goodness. Because if we don't know the difference between the two, of the ego on the one hand and the higher self on the other, then what's the point? What's the point in really having a connection to ourselves if we don't understand who we are, what our purpose is, and what the true manner of existence is? Right? So you guys have some really amazing questions and comments, and a lot of love over here with Periscope. I appreciate it so much. And you guys, just want to let you know, I do have a few announcements. But before I get to my announcements, so if you guys have any questions now, or if you're watching this later, then it's your now. I would be more than happy to answer any and all questions because it's my joy. It's the reason why I do this, is to share this confluence, this abundance of knowledge and wisdom with you all, because we all are not alone. We all are experiencing this life together, and we are all evolving together at different rates and different times, but yet we are still evolving together through the ego, connected to our higher self, and allowing us to blossom and to grow as one humanity, as one being, having an experience unto self. Yes. So, yay, time for some announcements, some exciting news. So for those of you who follow me regularly, know all about the things that I have going on. So I just want to let you guys know that my book, Awaken with Gratitude, is now available on Amazon. You guys can visit my site to receive that. It's also on paperback, Kindle, and now the audio book was just released on Friday. So yeah, you guys, appreciate it so much, all the love, all the goodness. So yes, so if you guys have the paperback, you might as well get the audio book so you guys can listen and read at the same time. With this amazing narrator, has an amazing voice that I like. So hope you guys get to enjoy that as well. And finally, Miss Robin is going to be seeing me here in New York City on October 8th for my very first seminar about gratitude and the law of attraction and how they work together. So pretty much it's an extended version of my weekly gratitude sessions here on Facebook. So if you guys are in New York or planning on traveling to New York, October 8th at the Edgar Cayce Center from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. 4 hours. I mean, that's all you really need, but I can go all day to talk about gratitude and the law of attraction and how they work together. You guys can get tickets and more information about that on my website, HillisPugh.com. So yeah, you guys are amazing. Today was an amazing day, amazing session. I hope I answered all your questions. And Renee and Teresa on Periscope and all my watchers. If you guys, definitely I will upload the replay to my website via YouTube tonight or tomorrow, next couple of days, so you guys can really watch it in its entirety, because there was some really amazing major points that was made. And you know, like anything, that if you hear it once, you got to hear it again, just to make sure that you receive the clarity and the message of it. So before I sign out, I just want to make sure, any last questions, anything else? No. And like I said, if a question comes up later, thank you, Renee. If there are any questions that come up later, I will definitely be sure to answer any and all questions. And I will see you guys next week. Yay! Have an amazing evening and an amazing week. Until then.